What was that? Just a dog?
Yeah. I told you before I was in my walk-in closet. My son decided to hide in here amongst the clothes. So I just spotted him and had to throw him out.
That's fantastic. How many kids you got?
I got 2 little boys.
2 little boys. Oh, they're still in the hide-and-seek playing age. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've got 3 in college and 1 about to be, I don't know, maybe never even see the light of day to get to college the way she's been acting.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. She's the baby, and they all suffer the same thing, self-entitlement.
Oh, my God. That's a total thing. Like, the last one of the group just seems to, I don't know, just march to the beat of their own drum and not fall in line.
Yeah, well,
my little sister was the same thing.
They see their older siblings getting all these fruits of age, 4, 5, 6 years older, but they think, well, if she's doing it, how come I can't do it? Because she's right. 6 years older than you, idiot. Yeah. The heck?
If that's not the truth.
Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, where we are getting wilder by the minute. It's a podcast. We break down and celebrate the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. And right now, we are breaking down the film Young Frankenstein. I'm Alan Sanders. I'm your host.
And I'm Walt Murray, your co-host.
And joining us again from the Rocky Minute, the host of the Rocky Minute, we've got Doug Greenberg. Welcome back.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being able to come back and join us from inside the boxing ring to over here, where we've got the blind man and the Frankenstein's creature meeting up for the first time. And we finally get to see, as we open up this minute number 69, we get to see that he was actually saying, "Oh, I didn't realize you were a mute." So this, of course, will allow the gag to play out that the blind man doesn't realize that the creature is a creature. It's just another poor, unfortunate soul with the inability to speak.
So it was mute.
It was mute.
I was going with muse. Dang it.
Well. And if you stick with us through this whole minute, we are going to start with Gene Hackman as the blind man saying, "And you see how heaven plans," and we are going to somehow end with soup in a lap. Yes. Quite strange, if you ask me.
How do we get from A to Z? I don't know.
It's a crazy roller coaster ride.
Well, we continue the opening of this scene right after he realizes he's a mute. He basically is inviting the creature to come in and dine, or at least to come and make himself cozy. There is a lot of dialogue in the script that never makes it into this minute. Would you care to find out what it is?
Certainly.
First of all, I've got to try to figure out, why people are, moving boxes and shelves over from the Rocky Minute. Are you planning to move into the Transylvania over here to the Wilder Minute?
Little bastard snuck in here again. Listen, he's 6 years old, so he thinks this.
He thinks
he
it's
doesn't
funny.
think I'm doing something important. Yeah, exactly.
Well, what's great is we don't hear him, so all I hear is bang, boom, crash, boom. I'm like, what the heck is
really
going
sorry
on?
about that, guys.
No, I understand. My brother's 2 years younger than me.
No, actually, we call that production value.
Yes.
See, we paid for sound effects and a Foley engineer to make it sound like somebody was in your closet.
That's
with you.
right.
By the way, for folks who didn't know, Doug's in the closet. The two boys are simply cover.
That's right.
Anyway, there is a lot of dialogue, actually almost an entire page that has been stripped out of this scene as the blind man has finally decided to invite Frankenstein's creature inside. He says, "You must be cold and hungry. How does a cozy fire, a bottle of wine, and then some nice soup sound?" He just leaves would you like some soup? But it was supposed to be a cozy fire, a bottle of wine, and some hot soup. The monster goes, Blind man, God love him. Yep, that's good, isn't it? All right then, come along. And as they make their way into the room, the blind man shuts the door, leads the monster into a crude table. On the table rests a lit candle, a soup spoon, and an old wooden cup with a handle. That's all in there. But then the blind man, while all this is going on, is supposed to say, "You make yourself comfortable over here by the table, and I'll get you your soup. I haven't had company for such a long time. I'm a little nervous. You'll find a soup bowl just there. And on there, he cracks his cane across the monster's ear, which is very near a wooden shelf, and then says, on top of this shelf. He is then hitting the monster's head instead of the shelf. So he's supposed to be pointing to, but he's like smacks the creature in the ear, and he brings the cane down on top of his head. Oh, by the way, your spoon and cup are already on the table. And then he starts to go back to the fireplace, then turns back suddenly. Oh, salt! I forgot the salt. And on salt, he cracks the monster's other ear. So now he's been wrapped on one side of the head, back side of the head, top side of the head. Then the blind man continues, same place, next to the soup bowls. Oh, what a fun night this is going to be. And then the blind man goes to a large pot of soup simmering and says, oh, this is hot, hot, hot. Just the thing to take the chill out of that cold, hungry tummy. All of that obviously not in this scene.
That is a lot.
What's the old comedy thing about three jokes, right? 3 jokes in a row before it starts to get too much.
I think there's the comment about things should be in 3s.
In 3s, right?
But if you go more or less, it may not necessarily work.
Yeah, I think I'm happy with what they kept in. And cut out the, smacking him on the head.
Because we're going to have, and we see this in this minute, so it's not a spoiler. We obviously see that poor Frankenstein is dealing with hot soup being poured anywhere other than his bowl. And we will see other things that are going to happen to him. So I think the Walt, very funny in terms of the blind man using his stick to say, like pointing, here's where the cup is, here's where the bowl is, here's where the salt is, and smacking the creature and the creature dealing with it. At some level, it's too much Mel Brooks, not enough Gene Wilder had they left it.
Yeah, and I think it would have been I think it is a less is more kind of scene that we get the idea. He's blind. He, you have a little bit of slapstick without going over the top. And you convey to the audience that, what you're wanting to convey. And that is that he is beating up on the monster inadvertently and, we're headed down the trail with this scene.
Doug, don't we get enough of this though with the soup pouring? We don't need to keep bashing him over the head with a stick.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think the jokes that they left in here are far more smart than if, just a regular smacking on the head. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing, a blind guy with a cane, he's looking for something and he's smacking a monster on the head. Funny, sure, but the jokes here are so much smarter than that, I think.
Well, and two, with the cane, blind people use their cane to feel their way around. And I would think that he would be sensitive enough with that cane to realize that, once he hits him in the head once, second time, he kind of would have to realize what was going on there. So.
Yeah, it's almost too much of a goof.
It is.
Because we're setting him up as being sincere, and the joke is he doesn't know it's the creature, but he's still happy there's a friend here. He wants to entertain. He wants to. And this idea that he would be beating him over the head, thinking, oh, that's what it feels like to touch the bowl on the shelf. That's what it feels like to knock the salt. It wouldn't have worked.
And I think it would have taken away from the soup gag. Because I think you'd have already been like, okay, we had our laugh there. Let's move on to the next thing. Where the soup gag is really the hilarious one and the best written and acted out of any of these.
I think the soup gag, man, it's so hard because all 3 of the gags in this are hysterical. But you can't say that him hitting him on the head with the cane, he should know that he's not hitting a shelf. I mean, the whole cigar thing later on.
Well, that's true.
It's just so asinine to me.
Yeah.
But he feels like he's light. Well, his thumb's probably as big as a cigar.
Yeah.
It's true.
He's got this sense that he's got the end of the cigar in his hand. So.
Yeah. And at the beginning of this
Of course, that doesn't happen this minute, but.
Yeah.
Right.
But, at the beginning of this minute, one of the things that I thought was interesting is that he felt the monster's hand and he said, your hand is frozen, my child. Mm. And I was wondering, earlier on when we met the guy in the middle of the street, the magistrate or whatever the guy was, the
night patrolman, the night constable.
Yeah, the constable. Thank you. Those are the kind of things we look for from you. The insights into law enforcement.
That's
But that was one of the things he said. Oh, your hand is frozen, and so that we knew that he was dead. I wonder if their thinking here is that his body is still, cold as the corpse.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because every now and then I go, wait a minute, I've got a problem.
Yes.
I have kind of a problem with this, because if he's truly been reanimated in the sense of alive,
yes,
not an undead zombie,
the blood would be circulating.
Shouldn't his blood be circulating? Exactly.
That's what I thought too. And I just thought it was an odd line to have in there. And I don't know if it was in the script or not, but and certainly if somebody had been out in the cold all night, you would expect their hand to be cold.
And it is in the script. I mean, what I read to you that was different is what I read. But look how heaven plans me, a poor blind man, and you, a mute, an incredibly big mute. But your hands are frozen, my poor child, is exactly as it was written and left in the movie.
Yeah, and I just thought it was a little unusual and odd. And I mean, certainly they want him to get him to the soup bowl. But that was kind of odd, because I thought the same thing, that if he really is reanimated, then blood's going to be pumping, and the cardiovascular system's going to be doing its job and keeping the body warm.
Now let me play devil's advocate, and then you guys can both weigh in on how you think about this. We mentioned back before when we had Sully Baseball in here, when I was young, I had been dumb enough to go outside and shovel without gloves in the snowstorm, got a slight case of frostbite, and now I will lose the blood flow in my fingers very easily. They'll turn yellow and feel almost like they're going numb, and it takes a while to squeeze the blood back into them. So, in all honesty, it is a cold night. Is he just assuming, and we're supposed to forget the fact that he's alive, and maybe it is just cold outside?
Yeah, it could be. I just thought with the context, it was a little odd. It was kind of an odd choice. I don't know, they might not have even thought about that, but I just thought that was odd, that, and particularly with it being his hand, when it was his hand, 10, 15 minutes ago. So,
I might be crazy, but I just went ahead and suspended disbelief and not really thought that much about it.
Wait a minute. Are you going to go to the age-old, it's just a movie?
Come on, Dad.
That seems like that's a theme we're going to be hearing about more and more as we dive too deep into each minute. Idiots! It's a movie!
It's a movie!
The hell is wrong with you?
I love this movie and this scene so much that I don't even care.
It is interesting that you mentioned the right hand, Walt, because it was the right hand that the constable felt. It was the right hand that Gene Wilder was forced to, or Dr. Frankenstein, to play the improv hand game with. Right. So it's still the same right hand. Maybe he just didn't ever get blood flow in his right hand.
Yeah, maybe he, in his past life, had shoveled snow in Detroit with no gloves on.
I think there you go. A reasonable explanation.
I mean, it is an abnormal brain, and no normal person would do that, right? Is that what we're postulating here?
Listen, I brought you into this podcast. I'll take you out.
Is it possible he wasn't able to connect all the blood vessels? Maybe just the right hand. He kind of half it.
Well, he was dead and hung from the neck. So did that cause any circulatory damage from the jugulars down?
Could be some residual holdovers here that causing some problems.
What we're kind of jumping around a minute, but I love Peter Boyle's facial acting, his expressions.
Right. Just one of my notes.
He looks at the bowl and the soup ladle so longingly, and as the first scoopful lands in his lap, other than in the bowl, he's got the look of like, oh God, this hurts. But then when he sees the second ladle, he shifts immediately to, okay, back to looking at the bowl with concentration, and I can't wait to get this scoopful.
But the second time, he's like even more focused. Like he leans in just a little bit more because he's like, all right, the first one went bad. He's like, but there's no way that the second one's going to go bad.
Right.
So he looks a little bit more focused on that second one.
Yeah, like maybe it was my fault. Maybe I didn't hold the bowl steady. I'm going to really concentrate this time.
And I want the soup, but I don't want another lap full of it. And
well, that we don't even get to see the second one, right? Not yet.
No, not yet. It ends just as he's getting ready to scoop the next one, and as he's bringing the ladle over, that intense concentration. Yeah. He's got his brow furrowed. He leans down. He's looking out of his eyes. He's like, okay, I'm not gonna let him do it this time. I'm not gonna let that happen in my lap again. So I know we're gonna have to wait and see what happens on the next minute. But for now, just the intense, I'm gonna keep focus on this bowl. I'm not gonna let it happen again.
It's just the first one. It's just like, all right, I'm ready to get some soup. So he's looking at the ladle because he's trying to hold the bowl underneath it, but he's moving and he's like in the middle of that, he's like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, and I mean, this is just so well played, and I keep thinking this is Gene Hackman doing this. I mean, this is the captain from Crimson Tide. This is
well, the soon-to-be
Popeye
captain
Doyle.
of Crimson Tide.
Yeah, I mean, this is this is one of the great actors in Hollywood history dumping a ladle full of soup in Frankenstein's lap. I mean, this is awesome.
I don't know. Technically, it's not. Did you guys read this? That because of reshoots and makeup continuity problems, they had to do the reshoots on the ladle stuff. So that was Mel Brooks' hand.
That is actually.
Really?
I'm so glad. Look at this. I love a well-prepared guest. I don't have to bring up all of my notes. I can just say, well done, Doug. Yes, this is not actually Gene Hackman's hand in the close-up.
Well, good. Then
I don't want to step on anybody's toes, and I apologize.
No, that's why we have guests.
I had to correct Walt.
No, you bring credibility to what is otherwise an uncredible podcast. We appreciate that.
Either that or we bring you down.
We bring the stupidity. See, we're the Mel Brooks side. We need the Gene Wilder side to bring it up.
Oh, you're come to the wrong place.
I was. Oh, God. Well, what I really liked, if you look in this shot here towards the very end, where it's just the ladle, Gene Hackman had his hand holding it not like he was scooping it with the thumb side down. It was thumb side up. Now, the continuity isn't exact because Gene Hackman has had his thumb on the very tip or the very end of the spoon, but at least in terms of how Mel Brooks then held it, he held it the exact same way with his thumb facing up from the ladle rather than facing down, as if he was going to pour it gently. He was going to kind of scoop it. So continuity-wise, there's a little bit of a change, but it was close enough that unless you're watching a movie a minute at a time and slowing down, looking at 1 second at a time within that minute, you would never really know. Yeah, who is dumb enough?
Crazy
to do
people.
that. This makes we're going to shift to the boxing ring for a second because we're going to come back to you because I want to ask this, Doug. Because thankfully, with this movie, we had very few minutes so far where nothing's really taking place in the movie. When you were doing the Rocky Minute, I mean, at some point, you can only talk about the punches landing in the fight so long before you kind of run out of material. How did you guys handle that? Because I haven't had a chance to get into all of your minutes. I started listening to it just to kind of get a feel for it as all of our guests were coming on. And then you said, hey, keep listening. I think we really kind of got our stride, 20, 30 minutes in, which a lot of podcasts deal with that. But how did you tackle the fights that can sometimes be like 2, 3, 4 minutes of just punches?
I was really worried about that. I was talking to my co-host Jay, and I was like, should we bring in a boxing expert, a boxing guy to show how they're, how this isn't really how a normal fight would play out. And instead of that, we just was like, let's just have fun with it. But we ended up tangenting a lot. So, we did some of the punching stuff, some of the fight stuff, and then a long 5-minute tangent on something that wasn't fight related, maybe not even Rocky related. But
fortunately, we never do that.
No, we are always spot on with the content.
All business.
Yes. Yeah, that's us.
It flowed and it worked out well. I mean, we even some of the lighter early on, the lighter minutes, we weren't used to tangenting. So we, those are short, 14, 15-minute episodes. But even the light minutes later on, when there isn't too much going on, we still able to squeeze 20, 25, sometimes 30 minutes out of, blood from a stone. It just ended up working out.
I think, and honestly, those are the podcasts I tend to enjoy. I know there's and Walt, I've already been reading this. There's the debate. Are you supposed to focus minute by minute and stick to the movie? Or is it okay to maybe diverge from the movie? I think the true way to do this is a good mix of both. Don't go so far away that you forget you're talking about a movie, but don't feel like you can't have a fun trip down a rabbit trail. Yeah,
you kind of doing this. You want to feel like you're in a conversation with friends. You might be watching this movie with a group of friends, all of your listeners, and so you're going to talk a little bit about the movie, and you're going to tangent a little bit, and that's nature. That's how it goes. If you're too robotic, I don't know. It seems like it's not as enjoyable to me.
Yeah, because number one, I don't want it to feel like it's an academic exercise where you're like in class and we're just giving you like a lecture. But on the flip side, I want to make sure that we're giving you something. You know, we want to make sure that you're learning something, even if you're a huge fan. Well, Walt, I think one of the biggest compliments we've gotten from some of the folks who are fans like you. You were a much bigger fan of the movie than I was. I liked it, but I wasn't like the guy who's watched it 100 times. To have people say, I've watched this movie 100 times and never noticed that. Thanks to you guys, you've pointed out stuff that I've never seen before. And that to me makes me feel like, okay, we're hitting that stride that I'm looking for.
Well, and I think the other huge compliment that we got was from a good friend of the show and a good friend of mine who's fighting cancer. And she was just commenting on how she just laughs constantly when she's listening to the show. And I was like, okay, you know what? To me, that accomplishes our mission. I want people to love this movie as much as I do. I've learned a ton, and
well, it'd be nice if we knew something about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you come in as a blank slate, I mean, there's nowhere to go but up,
right?
And
it's like the Lego movie.
I would say,
look how big my brain is. I must be a genius. But there's nothing in it. I know, it goes forever.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome when we live in our dream.
I can relate.
Everything is awesome. Sorry. Doug, you were saying?
No, there you go, tangenting.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Walt, if she was your only listener, that would make it worth it.
Make it 100% worth it.
You know what? I had that conversation as well with my wife the other night. I was like, I can't guarantee how big the audience will grow by whatever point we decide, we've kind of invested enough and we may decide that the flame has burned out, whatever happens down the road. But to hear somebody who's battling something so significant and to know that we're at least a distraction in her daily regimen, I don't want to go through with what she's going through. And if I can help provide even just a modicum of entertainment for somebody dealing with that, then I call that, job well done.
Well, and it's also been fun for me, to hear what other people think about this movie that to me has been a movie that I've enjoyed throughout my life so far. And I'm sure for the next 50 years, I'll enjoy it. I mean, I'll be sitting in the retirement home, toothless and staring at a screen watching Young Frankenstein. And it's great to hear what other people think about the movie and how it's influenced and impacted them. Because it has, and it may be a chicken or the egg argument, but it has influenced my sense of humor. And they should be ashamed of themselves.
Well, Doug, this is a perfect time for me to ask, because we usually do it when we first bring somebody in, but we were so excited to dive right into this blind man sequence. Where does Young Frankenstein fall for you in terms of comedies? Tell us a little bit about how you decided that Young Frankenstein might be a movie that you not only like, but wanted to be involved with this podcast.
Initially when you guys, when I reached out to you, I said, Young Frankenstein is easily one of the top comedies of all time. But since you guys started, I've watched it twice throughout. Like once when you guys started, just so I wanted to be up on all the minutes of what you guys were talking about. Because I haven't seen it in maybe 2 or 3 years before. So, and then I watched it again last week to prepare for my minutes. And without question, 100% the funniest movie of all time, as far as I'm concerned. I remember the first time I saw it I was a teenager back in the 90s, and I was watching one of the dumb 90s comedies, whether it was Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, Jim Carrey, something like that. And my dad, I was laughing my ass off at it. My dad was like, "No, you don't know comedy. You're laughing at this stuff." He's like, I'm gonna show you something funny." So I don't know if he had to go on and rent it, because I don't think he had a copy of it. But shortly after, he puts in Young Frankenstein, and that, like, it started off as a black and white movie. I'm like, "Dad, come on, there's no way." He goes, "Just bear with me." So by the end, like, I don't laugh out loud at movies like I do at Young Frankenstein. It's the weirdest thing. Like, I'll think movies are funny and I'll think they're entertaining, but just thinking about this scene in particular, to laugh out loud the way that I do now and the way I did the first time I saw it, like I can't put a measure on it,
Yeah, and there are some scenes in this movie, like I was telling Alan, the scene when Inspector Kemp is knocking on the door and Marty Feldman and Gene Wilder are talking, and Gene Wilder turns around and he says, "And we have to," I can't remember the exact line, something like, "and we have to, be serious." And his collar breaks open and his tie goes flying. I laugh out loud every single time I've seen this, and I've probably seen that scene 100 times, and it is still one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen. And he doesn't even flinch. It's like he is so in his own brain, and
above all, we need to act normal
and bing, and his collar's up. I mean, it is just such a great scene, and there are so many moments like that where they don't go too over the top, but it is a really great humorous moment.
What I find with the movie and my experience with the movie, and even going back prepping for this, is for me, it wasn't necessarily laugh out loud the first time through because there's so much to process, but I remember talking about it all the next day. Like, did you see Young Frankenstein? Yeah. Oh, yeah, remember this line? Oh, yeah, well, remember this? And then you start going into that game where we all do with like Deadpool. That was one of the more recent movies where you just wanted to reenact one line after another because they were just so good. Different kind of funny than this. And I realized, okay, I'm going to go back and watch it again. And it got funnier every time I watched it, to the point now that it is one of my favorite comedies, thanks to this podcast and thanks to like really diving in, because there's so much smart humor, there's relivable humor, there's quotable humor. Like, Walt, you said the other day, if you run into somebody and they start talking about Abby Normal, you're like, oh my God, you're like a brother.
Yeah.
Or separate, brother from a different mother.
Absolutely. And, the guys that I saw the movie with, and then the guys that we grew up in the neighborhood with, yeah, I mean, we can throw one line of this movie out at any time when we're together, and it gets the flow going.
It's all of like seeing it early on, like you latch on to the things that are outwardly funny, that are obviously funny, like pretty much all of the Igor stuff, the soup in the lap stuff. But like seeing it 10, 20, 25 times, it like in this scene, this minute in particular, when like the monster's yelling after getting the soup poured in his lap, and Harold just keeps talking about simple pleasures, in life. Like there's nothing else going on.
Yeah, totally oblivious.
I love it. I love every minute of this.
One of the things that I wanted to make sure we point out, this is the era of practical effects because they didn't have digital. They couldn't add steam later. They couldn't make something look hot by throwing in some kind of a 3D FX or other kind of digital animation on top. This is really, really hot soup, by the way. And Peter Boyle had to have a protective, I don't know if it's like a blanket, but he had a protective pad in his lap. So that way when this stuff was poured on him over and over in the takes, that it wouldn't actually burn him.
That is crazy.
But this is literally piping hot soup being poured into his lap.
I just assumed that they had some dry ice in a...
No, this is a piping hot bowl of soup.
Wow.
Sitting over, and if you look, when Gene Hackman grabs it, I mean, it's hot from just being over the actual
over the fire. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he gets the towel to even grab the pot.
Right, he has to, and he puts it down right away and then starts to scoop the soup out. But it is piping hot. And you see it in the foreground of the shot, which again, for some of the framing, you don't think you're watching a monster movie, or you don't think you're watching like a cheesy comedy. You're thinking you're watching a really well-made throwback to that Universal era monster picture. You've got the framing of the piping hot cauldron in the foreground. You've got the ladle coming in. You've got Frankenstein's monster really watching the ladle, and the shadow of him in the background as if that's where the light's coming in from outside, lighting in through the window. It's just a really well-composed shot. And yet, while we're watching all this steam coming up and steam off the ladle, and here's Peter Boyle like trying to time where he's going to hold the bowl, and then it goes into his lap, screams out, and okay, let's try again.
Is that look
maybe some of the whimpering and the screaming is, maybe some splatter actually got.
Yeah, I would probably do that in anticipation that this is going to hurt.
Yeah, right.
I honestly can say I've never had hot soup spilled in my lap, but having 4 girls, it's amazing how they don't realize how easy it is to knee dad in the nads.
Yes, unfortunately, I can
Mommy,
relate.
why's Daddy bent over crying? Honey, I'll explain when you're a little older. Did you kick Daddy in the baby maker?
Yes, I've been there.
Oh my God, yes, it happens freaking all the time.
Yeah, one of our kids was a jumper.
That's always what it
sitting
took.
on the couch, and man.
Oh man, that's brutal.
Well,
it's amazing how kids don't understand that.
No, not a clue.
Now, as older, we're very aware of that and very careful not to accidentally hit somebody there.
Oh,
as kids, they don't care. Kids are just reckless. They're wrecking balls.
Oh, well, for them, it didn't matter, so they didn't think about it.
Nope.
You know, just
Right.
I'm going to leap off of Daddy's, zipper and jump up to his lip. I'm like, or up to his lap, and I'm like, no, it hurts.
It's just another one of those like experience things that the kids have to learn.
Yeah. All right.
Well, speaking of zippers, did you notice that you get a really good view of the zipper on his neck in this minute?
That was also one of my notes. Yeah, a really good view of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how they, instead of using a bolt to bolt the head on as the old,
zipper.
Dr. Frankenstein, as Victor Frankenstein would have done, we've got a, zipper in his neck.
Which is really just kind of it could have been stitches, or
Right.
it could have been something else, but a zipper is what they chose. I mean, that's really a strange choice.
If you unzip that, is all like kind of stuff gonna fall out? Like how much is that zipper holding in?
Yeah, is the bolt in there? I mean, what is behind the zipper? That is a great question.
Dice Clay used to always call people snapper heads, but is there a zipper head?
There's a zipper head. Well, there's a movie called Zipperhead.
As we start to wind out here, minute number 69, Doug, anything else that you had in your notes that we didn't quite cover as we continue to have this conversation this meeting between the blind man and the creature?
One other question I had written down was Peter Boyle wearing a bulky bodysuit?
Yes. In fact, it's a note that we've had come up a couple of times. He actually was wearing about 125 pounds worth of excess material to make him not only bulky, but help him feel like he was lumbering so he wouldn't be too agile.
Wow, 120, that's a lot of extra weight.
That is a lot of weight.
125 pounds plus wearing 3-inch lifts in his boots to make him even taller.
That was only 3 inches?
Well, he's already 6'2" himself, so I put him 6'5" on the set.
But you mentioned him up against the 6'2" Gene Hackman, and he
may have a few
apple cart,
more.
No, that's what he stood on the apple cart when he first walks in. That's the only way that. And if you look, even when at the very beginning of the minute, right after he's trying to lead him in, there's a shot specifically shot very low up toward the creature to remind us how tall he is as he's sitting in the doorway. But if you watch very quickly as it cuts back to the 2 shot and they come into the room, you see that he's obviously walking on a platform. He's not. It's like Gene Hackman. You can see he's kind of making sure that he's not stepping on the same platform as the creature makes his way into the room.
So that has to be the world's biggest door frame because he's standing when he walks through it.
Oh, he is. But I mean, most door frames are like 7 feet. And now technically he should be hitting the door frame if we went by the monster, or by Dr. Frankenstein's description of a 7-foot long, 54.5-inch wide gorilla. So he should be at the top of the door frame.
Very true.
But if you look at the shot, again, the camera looking up to him, and I'm going to try to get to the exact seconds here for people who are, playing along with the home game. About 15 seconds in, it almost looks the angle that they shoot that his head is nearly touching the frame, even though it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's close.
Anything else, Doug?
No, that was it.
All right.
That's all in my
Walt,
notes.
what about you?
No, I think we covered everything.
Well, we are going to continue this minute on into Friday as we start to wrap up the week. And we saw that the blind man was going for scoop number 2. And this time, the creature was going to be very, very attentive to scoop number 2. So that's where we're going to continue into tomorrow. And we're actually going to end with a pair of cigars coming out, which is always nice. It's a good thing to have as an after-meal treat, a couple of cigars. Doug, as we are making our way to tomorrow, do you think you can come back and hang out with us? I know you're normally hanging out in the ring with Rocky and everybody, trying to kind of work on your stance and everything, but do you mind hanging out over here in the blind man's hovel?
That's all right. I'll put my workout off until next week, so I'll hang out for another day.
All right. Well, we want everyone to then come back and hang out, and if somebody wants to learn in the meantime where they can learn a little bit more about Rocky, Doug, where can they go?
You could go to duelinggenre.com. That's where that's our host website, run by Scott Corelli and Nick Jimenez of Back to the Future Minute. Yeah, so that's our little home away from home. Or you could stop by Facebook, join our listeners group, Mighty Mix, or follow us on Twitter, Rocky Minute on Twitter.
Awesome. Walt, what about us? Where can people find more about us?
Well, a great thing that folks could do to help us out is to go to patreon.com/thewilderride and take a look at some of the offerings that we have for people who join our team. We have some costs associated with hosting the site and some other things, and we would really appreciate it if y'all would consider even giving $1 a month would be great. And just help us defray some of those costs. And there are some other things that you can do, even up to being an associate producer of the show. So that's patreon.com/thewilderride. Ride. And then be sure and check us out on Facebook and the other places around the internet that you can find us.
And if you feel so compelled, not just with our minute, but any of these podcast minutes, if you are enjoying the show, take just a few minutes to go over to iTunes. That's one of the bigger podcast providers. If you would just go out there and just leave a quick review and put a comment, apparently the way the metrics work, if you leave a comment, it puts more weight to the rating you give a show. So do that. That helps all of us be found. If somebody's doing a search for, hey, is there a podcast about Gene Wilder? Is there a podcast about Rocky Balboa? It'd be nice that somebody could actually find it quickly. And so the more you can kind of, support what we're doing in terms of a quick comment and a rating, it helps all of us, and we appreciate that.
It really is big if y'all would just make that comment real quick.
And come back tomorrow as we wrap up the work week. We want to continue this scene where we, again, look at what's happening with Soup in the Lap and end with cigars on this, The Wilder Ride.
Zipper neck.
Oh, that's not a good thing. We're not going to explain that one. Look it up yourself. Look it up. Ugh.
No, zipper neck.
Oh, you said zipper. Oh, yeah, you can look at that's fine. That's okay.